The story of the Bible so far. God made the universe and put life on our world. God made humanity to look after it, enjoy it, and share life with himself personally. Humanity decided that they wanted to do things their own way, not God's, and told him to shove off. God loved us so much that he let us go. It broke his heart, it broke our relationship with him, and it broke our world. However, God never gave up on us and planned to offer us a way back to himself through his Son, Jesus. But who was and is this Jesus? Can he show us what God is like? Can he make a way for us to be forgiven and set free? Can he restore us and restore us to relationship with God? What does his invitation to follow him mean? As we look at people's encounters with Jesus 2,000 years ago, let's see what we can learn for our lives today.
The parable of the lost son. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'"
So when we think of encounters with Jesus, we often think of special spiritual places. But most of Jesus' ministry and most of Jesus' life was spent in normal, everyday places. Jesus was a carpenter, so I'm here in my shed to try and get that vibe just a little bit about going back to the root of who was this man who was more than that. You'll also hear a strange noise outside, which is one of our pet quails, who makes an awful lot of noise. But again, that rural vibe was something that was really common and normal in Jesus' life and ministry. But in the encounter we've just heard read to us just now, we hear Jesus tell a story that sums up the whole of the introduction that just played. Through the story, Jesus told of a challenging relationship between a father and a son, God and us. Jesus' storytelling conveys two of the most significant sentences in the world. I love you, and I'm sorry. They're sentences that are often associated with romance, but they are so much more than that. We see the father demonstrating his love for his son by letting him go. The father lives with the shame of being very publicly rejected. The son has in effect said, I want my share of the inheritance. I wish you dead. Your only worth to me is the money I would have if you were dead, so be dead to me so that I can have the money. The father's love doesn't only let the son go, but he also seeks to make it easy and possible for him to come home again. With undeserved grace and generosity. By the end of the story, we know that the Father's love is deep, it is costly, and it is real. So when we look at the Son, what do we see? Well, we see someone who thinks they know best and follows Frank Sinatra's famous words, determined to do it my way. He rejects parents and homes and goes off in search of adventure, which turns into a nightmare. Only when he gets as low as he can does he think about going home again. A good place and a family to which he once belonged. He recognised his mistake and dared to go back, to accept the shame of wishing his father dead and squandering all of his inheritance. His plan is that he'll go back and say sorry and hope that forgiveness will come. And maybe a place near the family, in the home, or near the home as a servant. He knows it's better than he deserves, but by now he realises the character of the Father who loved him, who let him go, who is kind. He knows that life as a servant is at least a possibility. But what happens tells us much more about the character of the Father, the nature of God. The Father is looking out for his Son, hoping and praying for his return. The Son, will he choose to come home? Will he choose to come back? And that's why when he sees him in the distance, he's been looking out. The Father runs to him. It sounds a normal thing to do, but really it wasn't. In Jesus' time, men of stature and wealth walked slowly, with dignity. What he does is like the Queen, hitching up her skirt and running through the trooping of the colour to hug someone. It was shocking and shameful. But the Father doesn't care. He wants his Son. He wants to get to him first, before the neighbourhood can pour scorn on him and reject him. He wants to be the first there. He gets there. He grabs his son. He hugs his son before his son could even get those words out. And when his son can finally say sorry, his father doesn't give him what he deserves. A clip round the ear and a lifetime of shame. He gives him far more than he could ever hope for. He reinstates him as his son. Robes and rings that he gives him are symbols of status and wealth. The father throws a party to celebrate his child being returned home. One church leader wisely said that the story of the Bible is of God the Father crying out, I want my family back. and then setting out to get them. Why? Well, because humankind, you and I, in different ways, like the son, have told God to shove off. I don't need you, I don't want you, I'll do it my way. We tell ourselves, we tell each other that we can do whatever we want, we can be whatever we choose to be as long as it feels okay to us. But God says that's not true. I have different ways. You need to start with me. And then everything else will start to come together. Come back to me. As my son, as my daughter. I've let you go. It broke my heart, but come back. I love you so much that I had to. So you could choose to freely come to me. That's the nature of God. God the Father who would let us go so that we can choose to come back and be a part of his household forever. All we need to do to come home is to say sorry. And to seek to live differently, to accept what Jesus did for us on the cross. Dealing with all the muck and all the rubbish and all the mess of our lives. And this is important and as valuable today as it was 2,000 years ago when the story was first told. Jesus longs for you and me to say sorry and come home. To God, our perfect loving parent. And feel the welcome of new life with him. What do you think? Do you need to say I'm sorry? Do you need to know God's I love you and divine hug today? We're going to take a few moments to let God speak to us. Is there something, or maybe there are many things, where we know we've done it our way, not God's way? We've rejected God's right to our lives. Do we need to come to him and say sorry? We want to live differently, Father. We want to live following your lead. We're going to do that with some words of a confession. And then have a few minutes of music and reflection. Inviting God's hug of love to hold us and welcome us as we come to him.